for coming along to one of Eski's 5 in 30 webinars. The idea is that we take a project, we take a campaign, we take a piece of media, and in no more than 30 minutes, we share 5 key lessons learned from it. So my name's John Gilbert. I'm the CEO of Eski, and for this project, we're going to be talking about Renaissance Whole Chaos Story. I was the producer, and I'm joined by
Iain Thompson. I'm head of media at Eski, and I directed, edited some of it, and did some of the camera work as well.
Yeah, you did. Right, okay. Well, we're going to talk about some of the other members of the team that were involved in it as we go along. And for anybody that isn't familiar with Renaissance as a project, we're going to introduce it by sharing the short trailer now.
Being a great Robin's a legacy that we want to leave at this club for the next 20 years.
I've got an ambition to be the most successful kayak captain there ever was.
This whole not won a major trophy since 1985, is something that resonates with me.
The object of the exercise today was to make our chairman smile. What do you think?
God, I've got to win it, man. I hope we win it.
It's love, but it's hate. It's hate.
It's 3 weeks, 3 games.
So there might be some Rovers fans on the call, maybe still getting some tingles on the spine from that special season it was, which we had the privilege of telling the story of. Okay, so our first lesson to share is around that preparation, really. It's really crucial to make sure that everyone is bought in and understands the purpose of the project that you're working on. So for us, we got the mandate to produce this initially from the chairman, and then we had to get the agreement from the owner, and then from the CEO, and then from the coach, and then from the players and the staff across the club, and then get the commitment from the fans. So it was quite a process that we needed to go through. And I think when you say you're going to make a documentary, or you're going to, particularly a sports documentary, everybody has a slightly different idea in their mind about what that is. So we had to sell the vision of that. I think one of the it was almost like it was easier because I'll talk a little bit later about our relationship with the chairman and the owner, I think, which was really important to this. But I think they could get it. I think one of the challenges, I don't know if you want to speak to this, Iain, was around the players, because we were finding that when we were interviewing them, there was a risk that you were getting that sort of standard BBC, Sky Sports type responses, and people see that all the time. We were trying to do something different here.
Yeah, I think the difficulty is that the players and some of the staff and things like that, then they just treat you like, when you go over to chat to them, to interview them, whatever, then they're going to treat you like the normal media. And I think the idea was that we weren't on the outside looking in, we were in with them. And I think that's what you want to show off to the audience, is the fact that you're there. And because you want to bring the audience in, so the audience feel like, oh, that was what it was like being part of the club, the team, the staff throughout what turned out to be a historic season. And I think that's difficult. I think a couple of things that we did to get around that was we started filming early. And a lot of these points we might come back to later in the webinar as well, because they'll speak to a few different points. But yeah, we started filming early. We started filming in 2024. Towards the end of the regular season, last couple of games of the regular season. And of course, in that season, they went to the grand final and lost as well. So I think for a start, the players got used to us a little bit there. But then also it's about talking to people and, making sure that and this isn't just to do with the players and the staff, it's to do with the fans and everyone, making sure that everyone's comfortable to have you around. And I think we come back to that a little bit later on in the webinar as well and other points. But yeah, making sure that everyone's comfortable having you around.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that I wish we'd done, and we did have an opportunity, but it didn't quite work, was insisted that we have a sort of like an not all club, but an all staff briefing where we were able to share that vision. There was an opportunity, you weren't available, and I was going to do it, and then they stood me down, and I think the club did it themselves. But we could have done that and allowed a Q&A for people saying, well, how is this going to be used? How do we know you're not going to make us look daft? That kind of thing. We'd have built that. There was
definitely some players who trusted us less. Not trusted us less, but I think they just weren't bothered about having cameras put in their faces as much. So I think you've got, people like Jared, people like Mickey Mack, things like that. They were happy with us being there and they were happy to chat to us off camera. They just didn't want to be filmed as much, you know, themselves or whatever. And so, you know, you had sort of that. I think if we'd have been able to actually get in front of everyone and tell everyone, yeah, this is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to, well, I mean, you know, the whole point of it was we weren't trying to make your normal kind of documentary where it's all about the big hits and the tries and, you know, arguments and, you know, like that sort of regular sports documentary, coaches screaming at people in changing rooms and things. We wanted to make something different, and we'll come on to that more a bit later. And I think it was getting that across to them about this is about the holistic approach of the club and how they treat players, how they treat ex-players, how they treat fans, how they treat the community around them. And it's getting that across. I think one thing we did well was one thing that was a good idea was to release episode 4, which was the Wembley episode that we finished much earlier than the rest of them. And we did that. We released that early. And what that meant was that people got an idea of the quality. They got an idea of the storylines. They got an idea of how we were using the fans to tell the story as well. And they got more of a buy-in on it because they knew what was, all right, this is what it is then. We showed that to the players early. And if you know, a lot of the players came and chatted to us after that as well. And I think that helped them to engage more. I think certainly people like Tom Davies, who featured a lot in that. I think he was really worried about how he'd come across. And I think he was really happy after that. And he was like a go-to after that. We knew we could always go and get an interview off him because he fully trusted us after that. And I think also that helped things like Craig Franklin, the operations officer until recently, who then...
You made that sound more ominous.
Yeah. But who then, you know, it gave him lots of confidence to be able to go to Sky and to Fox, which is where the series eventually ended up, and to be able to sell it to them.
Yeah. Our second point, a lesson learned, and it's so often the case on projects, isn't it? Is that set a budget and then and double it, which we literally did actually on this project. So the scope of this changed. Initially, this was going to be a book, then it became a feature documentary, and then it became a 6-part, and then it became a 7-part. So without going into kind of details of the projects, the whole thing was produced for less than £100,000, which seems like a lot of money, but I mean, there's 3.5 hours worth of 3.5 hours worth of content there, 14 months worth of filming. It's quite a significant project. And just to give an idea and to share around what some of those costs are on a project like this, it's things like the licenses of the footage. One of the episodes features old footage from the BBC, which nobody would ever particularly watch again, but there's a price for these kind of things that we need to pay. The travel and accommodation for going across the different, unfortunately most of the stuff's in the north of England, but not all of it is, and Iain will speak about that in a moment. Going to Old Trafford, going to Amsterdam, going to Wembley.
How successful they were.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Yeah, more games for us to cover, I suppose. But by far and away, the biggest cost on a project like this is the crew. And it comes down to how you spend your time. So you've got your pre-production and your preparation for interviews and where we're going to go and the opportunities. Then you've got being there. Do we need interviewer, 1 camera, 2 cameras, 3 cameras? Looking at our core team and bringing in extra people as and when we needed them, and that comes down to how we work that out. So I don't know how you found that, Iain, from a perspective.
I mean, it is tough because, like you said, like one of the biggest things is what games do you film? Like, and again, we'll come back to this. I keep saying that, but we'll come back to this. But one of the overarching stories of the season, the overarching story, was how well the team did. So then all of a sudden you've got, like, originally when we planned for this, we decided that we wouldn't go to every game, that we'd maybe go to every, third game or whatever and just keep an eye on the first team. But then all of a sudden they start doing well and they start doing better, and you're worried about, well, what if they slip up? Or, you want to get those big games. You want to get the games when maybe it doesn't go quite as well. And so you've got to make sure that you're as many games as you can. But being at as many games as you can costs money. Do you send along just a cameraman to get some general visuals and just make sure, we've got it covered? Do you send along a journalist as well to be able to get interviews? And who are you interviewing? Are you doing a full sort of like journey there with some of the fans? And if so, do you need 2 cameras and a journalist as well? So those sort of costs, like you say, the main cost is the human cost, and that starts to rack up because all of a sudden you don't want to miss a game just in case. I think we were quite. I think one thing that we did well is that we had a plan at the very beginning of how we were going to run the edit. And largely we kept to that right to the very end. There was some extra stuff added in, there was little bits taken out that maybe didn't work, but largely we kept to that. So that kept our narrative there in terms of what we wanted from the fans and from the players story-wise. What we didn't know was we would have a meeting every like 2 or 3 weeks where we decide what games we're going to in the next 2 or 3 next month or whatever, and who's going to them. And so we were basically having to predict, like, what do we think they're going to do against that team? What do we think we're going to do against that team? And I mean, the closer to the end of the season it comes, it's just like, yeah, send someone to everyone.
Well, I was going to talk about that. I mean, the thing is, so it's one of the things I wish we'd done is found another backer. I'd say investor, but it's a backer, really, a donor to do this, because we didn't want to go back to the people that put the money up front and ask for more money, and we didn't. But if we'd have had a third or maybe a fourth person to do that, would have given us more scope to do things, because we did get to the point where it was just anything goes. We start off with any projects where you've got a really clear budget breakdown, and then you get to the point where it starts getting a life of its own, gets legs of its own, and we made the decision that we were committed to making this the best series that we could, and it means that you basically eats your profit from a project like this. But it was a conscious decision that we made, I mean, because we couldn't go, oh, we ran out. Why didn't you ever show the end of the season? Now we ran out of budget.
Yeah. But you've also got to be conscious. You don't just make it a passion project where it's not, where it's not making anything. Really. Yeah. But
we're small business owners. We're able to make that decision, really. So yeah, but that's the reality of it.
Just one really quick thing. We had a meeting a few weeks after I think it was even before we'd finished all the edits, but a few weeks afterwards, where we sort of debriefed on how it had gone so far, because we were purely in the edit at this point. And also on that, John was saying earlier about 14 months of filming. You can add another 2 or 3 months onto that as well if you include the edit. Yeah. But yeah, we had a meeting a few weeks afterwards where we were discussing what could we have done differently in the filming process. And in terms of, because we've got mountains of stuff that wasn't used. We've got mountains of stuff where we've used bits of it, but not more of it. We've got, so much stuff has ended up on the cutting room floor. Would we have changed anything that we filmed? I mean, I said in that meeting, and I stand by it now, I cannot think of a single decision where I said like, oh, let's go and film that, and it was completely pointless. I think I would still say yes to those things now, because even the things that we didn't use, they led to something. And an example of that, if I can come to it now really quickly, is Amsterdam. We went along to Amsterdam. Obviously, it wasn't that cheap. We had to get the boat across. We couldn't get the boat back on the following night after the game because it was full. The boat on the Sunday was full. We ended up having to stay till the Monday night and then get the boat back. It was an expensive thing. 2 of us went along, but the connections that we made with fans there, and part with some of the staff and things like that who were helping make the film, were invaluable throughout the whole series. They'd sort of led the entire series then. We met James Duff, we met, we firmed up our relationship with Adge, we met Joe, we met several people who would then lead us to other people that were in the film, or they'd be in the film themselves. And that was huge, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So Ian's just mentioned a couple of people there, which we will explain in a moment. But the third thing is around, again, it's no big surprise this, but that maintaining good relationships with the people that you're filming. Now, again, I mentioned earlier, people have their own idea of what documentary is. And if you're used to watching Louis Theroux trying to expose a dark element of society, then I guess some people are going to be on the defensive. We weren't doing that. It was with the club. It was in partnership with the club. It wasn't that we were ever going to be putting out footage that wasn't signed off, that people hadn't approved. So it was a little bit easier for us from that perspective. But it was about how do you tell the story of a community of literally thousands of people is quite difficult. So we recruited people through relationships. So Harriet Jones, who was Ian's co-director on this, sort of led on those things along with the rest of the team. And she's just saying around one thing leads to another. And I think that's what happened with a lot of those stories. And for anybody watching this who hasn't seen the series, yes, you see lots of rugby, and yes, we do follow the players and the coaches, but it's about the love story between the community and the club. So that sort of personal story and the social impact of it, which is what we do, that's our specialism of filmmakers, and that's the thing that makes it slightly different. And we owe a duty of care to those people because they're sharing some very personal stories and experiences, and we have to make a decision about what goes into the film and what doesn't, and make sure they're entirely comfortable with it. So I don't know if you want to talk about some of the way those relationships and were managed now, was make sure we looked after people.
I mean, yeah, and really, like, absolute credit goes to Harriet on this as well. Harriet's incredible in that you can do a vox pop with someone for like 30 seconds on a rainy day when you've got 20 other things to think about in Wigan or somewhere. Beautiful place, Alex. Not knocking Wigan at all, but yeah. You can do a vox pop with someone for like 30 seconds, and it doesn't even get in the film at the end. Harriet will remember their name. She'll remember something about them, and she'll remember exactly what they said. She's incredible at it. But she's also really good at building relationships with people. So it was her. I mean, it was both of us, but it was Harriet mainly in Amsterdam who, made friends with some of the fans and things like that, and made sure that she got their contact details and if we ever wanted them in it, but not just if we ever wanted them in it. If we ever needed to know a couple of people we met at Amsterdam, we'd ring them and say, like, is there anyone in the fan base who would be good to talk to about this? And we'd find other people from that as well. The club were great at knowing a lot of their fans. It was incredible the amount of fans that the club knew, and they knew a lot of their stories as well. And that was really handy. But we were also conscious of the fact that we didn't want to use people that would always be used by the club, which Adge is one. And Adge was brilliant, and we used him a lot. But we didn't want to be constantly doing that with everyone. So we wanted to make sure that we found new and interesting and different stories that people wouldn't have heard anymore. And yeah, things like Amsterdam were great for doing that. You've got someone like James Duff, who we met on the trip to Amsterdam, who tells us about why he started supporting Rovers after unfortunately his wife died, and a couple of his friends reached out and said, why don't you come along with us to see KR, and that sort of became his life, and it gave him the confidence to get himself back out there again. And I think not only is that a really nice story to tell, and James was brilliant, he was also incredibly nervous about doing the filming, to the point where he was visibly shaking whenever he did it. But he also said to us after the filming, it's given me massive confidence. It's helped me. After the filming and the editing all finished a few weeks ago, he did the Strictly Come Dancing with Dove House. And he said, I wouldn't have done that had it have not been for the filming. I loved doing the filming, even though it scared the life out of me, and it's encouraged me to go on and do other stuff. And I mean, he was terrified, absolutely terrified. We went and watched him in Strictly Come Dancing. He looked like he was going to throw up at times, but he did it, and he had the confidence to go out there and do it, and he did incredibly. So, that was just a really nice story of how, like, the fans, they helped us as well, but I think the filming in a way almost was quite cathartic for them as well.
Yeah,
for some, yeah.
Because that's it. We've got an ask, haven't we? We've got a job to do, and it relies on people being open if they can get something from it as well. Yeah. If anything, there's people watching the series looking to see if they were in it. People who might have been apprehensive in the first time, and I think that thing around having, as we mentioned earlier, because we released the episode 4, the Challenge Cup victory, part way through, I think that people were just like, I want to be in this film.
Yeah.
And I'm going to come back to that on the quality at the moment.
There was also, just to chip in, there was also phone calls we had to make, but just before it went out, to let a few people know that their bit didn't get in as well, which is a shame. But, like you say, that duty of care kind of thing, we wanted to make sure people knew that they were in it, or knew that they were in it, and which bits we were using. And Harriet was central to that. But yeah, we all made sure that happened.
Yeah. Just on that, actually, if there's anybody watching who, because I know there are people who are involved in the club, there's a 7-part TV version of this, and then there's a 7-part kind of full episode one, which is now available on YouTube. They are some of them are slightly longer because you had to trim them down to meet Sky Sports and Fox Sports' criteria, which unfortunately means sections have to go, which ideally wouldn't go, but it's just the reality. When we did this, we didn't expect it to get a TV run. We didn't have a commission at all. We knew that might happen, but that was done retrospectively.
Yeah, I think there's only one episode that's the same. The rest of them are between about 1.5 minutes and about 7 minutes different. 6.5, 7 minutes.
Just one more thing on the relationships. Again, for anybody thinking about making a film, again, it's a bit of a given, but the whole production was born out of relationships. And for Esky, we were in a bit of a unique position here because initially, as I mentioned earlier, this is a journey that began with Paul Sewell, the chairman of the club, and who was one of the backers of the film. We'd previously worked with Paul on media project. In fact, it probably consolidated during lockdown when he and I made a podcast series about me turning 40 and trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my career. And then from that, Paul had written a book, and Iain knows that probably Paul's your mastermind specialist subject because you've made the audio book with him. Then we produced a film called Who is Yorkshire, which won awards and was really good. So we sort of had that track record. And then also Neil Hudgell, who was the owner and the other backer for this as well. I mean, again, that another sort of like working relationship that began around lockdown. And Neil had looked at some of the clients that they had and like, how do we tell those client stories? And together, the same crew on this, led by Iain and Harriet, Chris been working on that as well, had produced a film called 2 Decades, the Horizon Postmasters scandal, which again had been really effective. So it wasn't like we'd come in and they'd taken a chance on that. I think that track record is really important for people, as you would expect. Okay, we're on the home straight. Number 4 is around the getting the balance right between the narrative planning and then allowing those stories to unfold. So just to give a bit of insight into how something like this was planned. We didn't just go like, let's just rock up to places with a camera and see what happens and then we'll tell the story afterwards. We'd identified certain themes and actually how we were going to structure different episodes around that, and that was around the turnaround of the club, which is where it all began. For anybody that doesn't already know this is a club that hadn't won a major trophy for 40 years, had fairly recently experienced relegation, not that long ago at the bottom of the Super League, and so that turnaround that happened in that time, due to a number of key factors, we wanted to bottle that and to share that. We knew we wanted to talk about fans, we knew we wanted to talk about community impact, we knew we wanted to talk about more than just the first team and how it is this one club and the different facets there around disability sport, around the women's team, around just so much more that they do. We wanted to talk about the business side of it and then ultimately the impact of the legacy. But how we would do that, there's so many different ways you could tell that story, really.
Yeah, I didn't realise you were going to ask me a question then. I think what was really important to us is, like I said earlier, we didn't want to just make another documentary that was following the first team.
There's a book coming.
Yeah, we didn't want to just make a documentary that was following the first team and that was like all the other Sunderland Till I Die, all those sort of the Man City one, I don't know what it's called, the Tottenham one. We didn't want to just make another one of those because it had been done plenty of times. And I think also we looked at what different things people might want to see and also what we excelled at as well. And I think
now rugby league is different to football.
Yeah. And I think what we excel at is telling human stories and telling people stories and learning about how people's stories also go towards telling the story of a community and within that, and don't want to make it too businessy, but the story of a business and how that feeds into the community and those sort of things. And I think that's what we excel at, and we decided to make that sort of film, and that's also coincided with a similar what Paul wanted to make and what Neil wanted to make as well. So that was important. And as I say earlier, we've made a plan of we're going to have this in the first episode, we're going to have this in the second episode, and themes of each episode. And largely we kept to that. But we also said there was a meeting a few weeks before the start of the season with Paul and Neil and Craig and us. And Neil had said in that meeting, he said, there's always going to be stories that crop up, like a player's going to be caught speeding, or someone's going to fail a drug test, or they're going to get into a fight in town. He said it happens every single season. And when that does happen, we want you in the boardroom covering that. annoyingly, the players were pretty much exemplary, more or less. So none of that, literally none of that
did it,
happened.
or it was well covered up.
Yeah. If they did it, we didn't find out about it. So none of that happened. But the story that did come out was the story of how incredible the club were over the season, and not just on the field but off the field as well. And so the off the field stuff fed into what we wanted to make the film about. But the story that we had to follow was largely about the first team, and then we had to think about, well, how do we link the first team's fortunes into what we want to make as well, into those fan stories and the community's fortunes and Hull, the city's fortunes as well. And so, and you know, the board and the backroom staff and everything. And I think that's sort of like the way it went, basically. So like we did hang around and wait and see what stories unfolded. The story that unfolded was the very one that we thought at first wouldn't unfold.
Yeah, quite possibly. And I think, again, if you look at a documentary like this, you'll see that there's a mix of sit-down talking head interviews, where typically led by Harriet, where she's sort of like trying to get more than that standard sports documentary interview about somebody's thoughts, feelings, hopes and dreams. And then there's the stuff that's on the fly that's happening. And actually, for me, that watching this back, that my favourite parts are the stuff where people are in a natural setting environment. So when we invested in going to an away game with the fans and seeing them, where you've seen the behind the scenes relationship between CEO Paul Lakin and owner Neil Hudgell, and they're sort of those things, to me, it's like that is something that makes it a little bit special, and the rest of it gives it structure, I suppose.
And it should be said as well, like as a company, we specialise in that sort of social impact filmmaking, the social impact campaigns, and that sort of thing. And I think the fortunes of the team fed into the impact that the community received from that as well. Yeah. So it all feeds into that same story, if you like. Yeah.
Okay, so then our final point then, I think we are keeping to time quite well, which was around managing risks and creating the conditions for luck, really. I mean, it's attributed to Seneca that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And if you would look at what this club achieved, you wouldn't say they got lucky to win it. It's about they did so much preparation. We didn't do quite as much as a club, but we had to do the preparation to do that. One of the things that we did to mitigate that risk is we actually started filming at the end of the 24 season, just in case they won the grand final, finished second in the league, and then
we have to make something about how you maintain
that. So actually, although not much of that footage appears within the final documentary, of course it was essential that we were there, and from a narrative perspective, if not from a fan perspective, it was perfect, because it was to come so close and then to win a lot, really. In terms of like what I would wish they would do, I wish that we'd put a clause in that if they win everything and they go to Vegas and they play the World Club Challenge, we get to film that.
Vegas,
we didn't get to do that
for a month.
But one of the things that I'm glad that we did, and I think that sort of managing the look, is the crew that we had on this. So obviously Ian and I are here. We've mentioned Harriet, co-director. We have Dave Stubbins on film. We have Chris Hopkin, and then there were others in and around who were brought in to do that. And people, it becomes a bit of an obsession, really. So you're managing all of the time, looking at the story and thinking, what are the risks and what could go wrong? And sometimes taking a punt on, even on like a shot. I mean, like there's a really lovely shot of the mascots in the peeing rain, where the Challenge Cup final, where it looks good, like everything's going wrong. Dave made a decision to go and take a risk on getting that shot. As a crew, you are making decisions all of the time, I think.
Yeah, I suppose you put yourself in a position where something can happen, don't you? And I think that as a team, then that's what we did all season. It's worth mentioning Dave alongside Harriet as well, because for majority, especially of the away games, but all the games, it was Dave and Harriet who went along and did the majority of the filming.
Yeah.
So it's definitely
Dave took a risk with popping a drone up for that lovely Coldplay shot that you can see there at the moment. We haven't got time to go into it now, but the drone could have been shot down. You took a punt with leaving the camera rolling after the Wakefield game at the end of the season, which we hadn't typically been doing, but it's a lovely bit at the end of episode 6, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, and
which is the biggest bit of jeopardy that we see. So yeah, it's about taking those. You're not lucky on these things. It's about all the preparation that you do in advance.
I mean, Coldplay in general, we turned up not knowing we'd be able to get in because we were told that we wouldn't be allowed in. We managed to get to the exterior, or Dave and Harriet managed to get to the exterior, Then they were allowed onto the concourse bit around it, where all the concession stands and things like that were. And then when people started walking into the arena, they just wandered in, and no one stopped them. And you know, it's putting yourself in those positions. And I think as a team, all of the crew and the documentary team as a whole, put ourselves in positions all year where we could be lucky.
Yeah. So that's a wrap. We've overrun by a minute, apologies. But thank you everybody for joining. It's been a fantastic project to be involved in. And if you are interested in talking about any of those things, you've got a project you'd like to talk and learn from, you've got our contact details. So thank you everybody for attending.